All right, so let's get going on today's class. So I'd like to welcome everyone to Statistical Analysis in Psychology. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be basically introducing the course, introducing what you can expect. And then in the second and third hours, we will get right into it, start up on learning some of the fundamentals that we need to know for statistics, and start up on this summer course. So for this first part, for this first hour, this is just going to be your intro to the course. So a little bit about who I am, just a little bit of background so you know who this is standing in front of you. And then we're going to have the course overview, details about the course so that there's no surprises in the next coming weeks. We'll talk about the course procedure, what you can be expecting to do. And then we'll end this first hour with some syllabus highlights, just so that you are aware of kind of how to plan your semester for this summer session. All right, so let's start off with a brief introduction. We'll begin with the name, one of the hardest parts of this course. So my name is Dr. Igor Yurichevich, and like we do in statistics, when we're doing statistics, oftentimes you take something that might seem unapproachable in its whole, and you break it down into smaller parts so that you can understand it. So that's what we're going to do during this course. So we'll start right now with my name. So the way you pronounce it is it starts off with a U, and then after that you reach, and then you open up and say ah, and then finally you end with a beach. And if any of you are taking maybe a minor in mathematics, you might recognize that triangle there as a beach. So it's you reach beach. So let's try that on 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, great. So I'll chalk that up to first page jitters. All right. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. That's a little bit better. It'll get better as the semester goes on. So this is a very important slide for this course, especially because statistics is a very hands-on practice and non-intuitive approach to understanding our world. So it's about understanding the data that we observe, the information that we get from the world, but it is something that is, number one, non-intuitive. This is not a natural way of thinking about things. And it is also something that, unlike other courses, needs to be practiced. You cannot read and learn about statistics. You have to do in order to learn about statistics. So this slide is going to become very important because you are going to have questions during this semester. You are going to need assistance during this semester. So whenever you do, simply put your hand up. Dr. Yurichevich, can you show us how to do a t-test one more time? Dr. Yurichevich, I'm doing my homework during practice time and I just can't seem to get this one particular question right. Dr. Yurichevich, we're preparing for the exam. Can I see how to do a confidence interval one more time? Whatever you need to get done and understand statistics in this course, feel free, use this slide, refer to it, call me over. We're here to make sure that everybody can learn and do statistics by the end of this semester. All right, so continuing on with this brief introduction, I'll give you some background on the research that I do. The research that I use statistics to help me understand. And what I'm doing primarily these days is I'm studying visual language. So much like we have a human language where we speak, where you can read it, we also have a visual language that is becoming more and more important to understand as our world and our ways of communicating become more and more visual. So a lot of my work has to do with the metaphorical aspects of visual language, the same way that we have metaphors in spoken word or written word, such as John has a heart of stone, is meant to be understood metaphorically. I take a look at images that are meant to be understood metaphorically, and much of my research draws upon comic book images in order to test and explore various theories. So, for example, one thing that I do is I study visual language grammar, the rules that we use, and also the visual language lexicon, sort of symbols that have been developed. So you can see here we have two covers, one of Daredevil, and one for falcon. And you can see that both of these covers have the same sort of visual structure. They both have the same visual grammar. So for example, in both cases, the villain is drawn, his figure is drawn very, very large. So Kingpin is drawn very, very large. Do not recognize that guy, but he's drawn very, very large. That is an indication, that's a metaphor, an indication that this villain is very powerful, that this villain might be omnipresent, that this villain is going to be a very important part of this particular story. And you'll also notice that the heroes in both of these images are not centered on the page. They're slightly off to the side. That asymmetry is yet another part of visual grammar. It tells you that this hero, even though he is like you, is not exactly like you. There's something different about him because symmetry is so common in nature. Anything asymmetrical communicates differences and uniqueness, and artists will use this to convey their information. Other studies that I've done on visual language and metaphor took a look at the communication of running and motion. And what we did with former students who have graduated, we took a look at a large number of comic book images where, for example, running was portrayed. And we took a look at how do they portray that running. So they can use literal elements, such as the positioning of your arms and legs. So your arms and legs actually move in a particular way when you're running. That is a literal representation of how your arms and legs move. But there's also metaphorical information here, predominantly with the action lines. So it doesn't matter how fast you run, you're not going to have lines starting to come out of the back of you. So that's a metaphorical piece of information. And we did an analysis of how these pieces of information are combined. And that was published in Comics Grid, Journal of Comic Scholarship. It was also published in the Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics. And as it turns out, we process literal information in an additive way. The more literal information you're given, the better the image communicates motion to you. But metaphors are processed in a completely different way. They're processed non-additively. That means that the first metaphor helps you understand the image, but additional metaphors don't do anything to help you understand the image. It's not information that's processed by our visual system. Other work that we continue to do is, again, looking at how we understand metaphors. So in this one, we took a look, in this next study, we took a look at the metaphor of gigantic size. So here we have Mockingbird, and she is portrayed as a gigantic woman, and her character is actually a normal-sized individual. So this portrayal of her as gigantic is metaphoric. It's meant to convey importance. It's meant to convey power. It is not meant to communicate that she is going to be a giant in this story. She's not going to take a growth serum or anything like that. She is important. She is powerful. She is central to the story. On the other hand, gigantic size can be used literally. So this is Galactus. Galactus actually is a towering giant in the Marvel Universe. So how does our visual system decide whether they're going to understand an image metaphorically or whether they're going to understand an image literally? And that's sort of what happens also in language. When somebody says, John has a heart of stone, how do you know to interpret that as John is emotionless rather than John needs to be rushed to the hospital right now and he needs a heart transplant? So we did that. We took a look at the various ways that contextual and structural information is combined to communicate either literal or metaphorical information. And that research was published in the International Journal of Comic Art as well. And what we found is that certain combinations of information of structural and contextual is preferred. And there is one combination, you can read about it in the article, that is not preferred, that is very confusing to humans, and is avoided by anybody trying to communicate whether or not something is literal or metaphorical. All right, and the last little glimpse into some of the research that I do, some of the stuff that I use statistics to help me analyze. We did a study on how does a metaphor actually progress through society? How do people agree upon a metaphor. So for example, the light bulb above the head. Everybody understands that that means that this person just had an idea. But it's a metaphor. A light bulb doesn't actually pop up above your head when you have an idea. So how did this metaphor actually spread through our agreed upon visual language? Well, we didn't test the metaphor of the light bulb, but what we did take a look at was a metaphor we identified known as close-up eye asymmetry. So this is a metaphor where you draw the person in close-up, so you can see just shoulders and a face, and you make them asymmetrical about the eye. So in this case, Storm has her hair coming down just over one eye. She's got electricity shooting out just out of one eye to create that asymmetry. There's nothing about Magneto's magnet powers or magnetism powers that is asymmetrical, but in this case you can see the powers only coming out of one eye. Same thing for the Harbinger comics, and you can do this with lighting and shading. You can do this with the positioning of objects, and you can do this with composition as well, as we've seen before, the asymmetrical placement of certain figures in your portrayal in your comic book image. So we did research on this. We traced it back to what we call a crystallizing event in our society. And this use of close-up asymmetry, which has made it into comics, it's made it into movies as well, surprisingly can actually be traced back to an image that David Bowie used in one of his albums. It can be traced back to the cover of Aladdin Sane. So by using developmental psychology, by using visual language studies, by using art studies, taking a look at when an artist is most susceptible to being influenced, when does an artist have their top creative output, we were actually able to trace the use of this close-up eye asymmetry, which has made its way into our visual language lexicon, if you will. We were actually able to trace it back to that one image back in 1974. So that was published. You can read about it in the Comics Grid as well. And to my knowledge, this is the first time that this has ever been done where we could trace the use of a metaphor back down to one single image. So that was pretty exciting. And plus, it's also cool David Bowie research as well. All right, so that was just a little bit about my research. If you are interested in finding out more about some of the stuff that I'm doing, you can actually follow me at Aladdin Sane on Twitter mostly. And you can also, if you want to take a look at some of the work that my lab is doing, I usually hashtag it with Comic Book Scientist, and we also hashtag it with Too Hard for soft science as well. All right, and while we're on the subject of social media, I just want to make everybody aware that I do have a YouTube channel, and importantly for you in this class, I post these lectures to my YouTube channel. I typically do it same day as when the class occurs. So this is something that you can use in two ways. Number one, actually three ways. Number one, if you miss a class, if you can't come in on a particular day, you do not have to fall behind. I will post those, like I said, typically on the same day. So if you just can't make it to a class, if work gets in the way, if your babysitting falls through, whatever the issue is, do check the YouTube channel, follow along with the lectures for that day so that you can keep pace. If you, after attending a lecture, are still confused about what happened, this is a great resource to help you review, see it one more time. It might just take one more look at it in order for it to snap together and make sense to you. And then the last way that you can use this as well is I actually already have, I've been doing this for a few semesters now, and you can see that I actually have my statistical analysis in psychology spring semester is up there, and also my previous fall semester is up there as well. So if you know that you are going to have a particularly busy week coming up during your summer session, feel free to work ahead. You can go forward in the lectures. I do tweak them every single semester, but 95% of it is going to be the same information. So this will also allow you to kind of plan out your summer session. You can work ahead, get ahead in the material. And also, as you're going to see, we have pre-tests that you need to complete. And feel free to use this resource as well to help you understand some of the material that you'll be doing for your pre-test. All right, so one last little part of the introduction. So this is part of a initiative that I joined by the National Alliance on Mental Illness. This is part of their stigma-free initiative. And as part of taking that pledge, as part of being that initiative, I start every class that I do by just letting people know that I battle with depression. I have been diagnosed. I'm currently still trying to work my way through recovery. But just to kind of get it out there in the open and kind of remove that stigma that's been placed on this, partly because of the fear that people have in talking about it. So one of the things that I like to do for this part is to kind of show anybody who might be dealing with these issues, might be succumbing to some of these disorders. I just want to let you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. You can get help. Help does make a difference. And importantly, you need to get help. This is something that our society doesn't really understand. This is something of a myth that's been going around that you can conquer this on your own. I'm here to tell you, you cannot. And I'll just kind of give you a timeline to show you what can happen when you go out and receive help. So in this timeline, we have when I started at IUSB. And this was when I was diagnosed with depression in spring of 2012. And I would love to tell you that it occurred in the spring of 2012. I wish I could tell you, oh yeah, I came down with depression in April 2012. But in reality, I was dealing with it for many years prior to that. It was just undiagnosed. And again, this was the period of me trying to tackle this on my own with massive amounts of failure. So I got diagnosed with depression. I got on a prescription along with cognitive behavioral therapy. My final prescription was filled about a year later. And I also wish I could tell you that that was it. I was depression free. Woo, it was all over. But in reality, recovery is an ongoing process. You got good days, you got bad days. You take 2 steps forward, you take 1 step back. But it's a process that we're going through, in order to better ourselves and, fully recover. Now, one thing that I like to do is to kind of show you that there is recovery. This does make a difference. And one way to do that is to actually measure what my productivity has been like during these different phases. So in academia, in the university system, your productivity as a professor is oftentimes measured by your publications. How much research have you published? How much research have you put out there into the world? And you can publish it in peer-reviewed publications and non-peer-reviewed publications. But basically, how much of a contribution are you making to psychology? So when I was in the midst of having depression, I published one article with my postdoc supervisor, and that was it. And that's not very much. We're supposed to do about 1 a year. That was all I could muster up because of the issues that I was dealing with when I was diagnosed with depression. But it did get better. So slowly but surely, I started to publish more. So you can see there in the spring of 2016, I had 2 publications. Later in the fall, I had another publication. 2017, the floodgates kind of opened, and I had 5 publications in spring of 2017. And I couldn't fit it all on one slide, so let's keep going. Spring of 2018, another peer-reviewed publication. And now in spring of 2019, 1 more peer-reviewed with 3 more non-peer-reviewed publications. So you can see what happens before you get help and then after you get help. So this is just my little public service announcement to let you know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that therapy does work, that you don't have to be ashamed, you don't have to have that stigma attached to it. And if anybody is wondering if maybe they may be suffering from depression or some other sort of mental illness, or if you feel that maybe a friend of yours might be going through something and you don't know what to do, feel free to come to me. I can be your first point of contact, and just know that I've gone through it, and I can completely identify, and let's make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that we can be our best selves, and don't for 1 second believe that you can do this on your own. All right, so that's about me, enough of that. Now we're going to take a look at the course overview. So in this course, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be learning about statistics and how it applies specifically to psychological research. So if we were doing statistics as a statistics course, right? If you were sitting here so that you could become statisticians, well, your textbook would probably be about that thick. If you're just doing statistics for the sciences, your textbook shrinks down a little bit. If you're doing statistics for behavioral sciences like psychology, your textbook shrinks down a little bit more. So as it turns out, there are statistical procedures that are used very often in psychology, and those are the ones that we're going to be focusing on. They're also used in other behavioral sciences, but those are the ones we're going to be focusing on because those are the ones that are most important for this particular area. So the concepts that are going to be reviewed are going to include measures of central tendency and dispersion, elementary probability, statistical inference, hypothesis testing, and analysis of variance. Those words might not make any sense to you right now. They will by the end of this semester. And another thing that we're going to be doing, and this is a very important part of this course, is we're also going to be learning competence and skills with statistical software. So we're going to start with the very general purpose software of Excel. We're going to learn things about how to use Excel to do certain statistical analyses. And then in the second half of the course, we're going to move into SPSS. And this is a program that is specifically made to do statistical tests. It's a very specialized software. So those are the two that we're going to be introducing. And I just want to be very, very clear, you cannot do this course pencil and paper style. So you need to learn Excel in order to be successful at this course. You need to learn SPSS in order to be successful at this course. And really, in the real world, you need to do that as well. So if you go on from here into a career in psychology, into a career in nursing, into a career anywhere, and somebody asks you to do a statistical analysis on some data, and you pull out a pad of paper, a pencil, and a calculator, at first they're going to think you're joking, and when they realize that you're serious, they're probably going to wonder, why did we hire you? So times have changed. We need to be able to use these statistical packages, so that we're going to be doing that as well in this course. So objectives include, again, that proficiency with Excel, using MyLab to complete pre-test, post-test, and homework, create and interpret frequency distributions, calculate measures of central tendency, calculate and interpret z-scores, we'll learn about those, choosing the correct hypothesis test across a variety of experimental designs, using SPSS to perform a t-test, using SPSS to perform an ANOVA. All of these things we'll be tackling this semester. These are all fundamental parts of understanding statistics for behavioral sciences. All right, any questions so far? Cool. All right, so let's take a look at an example of where statistics becomes very, very important. So let's say that you graduate from here, and we'll keep the topic on depression. Let's say that you start working in a clinic that deals with depression, helps people treat people with depression. And let's say that you have two treatments that you're trying. Two treatments that you want to see which one is more effective. So we got treatment A and we got treatment B. And let's say that you give one group of your patients treatment A and you give another group of your patients treatment B. And then after the treatments, you measure their Beck's depression inventory score. So higher scores mean greater depression. And for treatment A, the average for that group is a score of 42.6. For treatment B, the average for that group is a score of 25.7. So since elementary school mathematics, you have been able to know or been able to determine that 25.7 is less than 42.6. So that's not what we're going to be doing in this class. It's easy to take a look at this and say, that number is smaller. That indicates less depression. The question, though, is why is that number smaller? And that's what statistics is all about. That's what it really boils down to. Because there are two possibilities for why treatment B had a smaller depression score. First possibility is that this is actually a real difference. Treatment B is actually better. It's a more effective treatment. If this is the case, then what you should do is you publish your results. You get on the phone to every other clinic in America and you say, listen, I have developed this new treatment and we can help hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people suffering from depression with this new treatment that I found that is a highly effective, awesome treatment. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that this was a fluke result. If it's a fluke result, publishing this information, calling up those clinics and saying, I have this really great program would be a huge mistake because your program does not actually work. Your treatment does not actually work. And you are endangering the lives and the mental health of possibly millions of people by promoting this treatment that is not effective. So this is the case whenever you see any difference in an experiment, in treatments. It could be due to real differences, in which case we have a responsibility as psychologists to tell people about this so we can help millions of people. On the other hand, it could be a fluke result, in which case we as psychologists must not report this, must go back and try to determine what could be a real effective treatment. And we as humans, with the way that our minds work, we are horrible at determining which one of these is actually the case. We are really bad at figuring out whether it's a real difference or a fluke result. And that is the main reason that statistics is used in psychology, is to determine which one of these is the actual truth. Is it a real difference? Is it a fluke result? That's going to be the ultimate goal of what we're learning here in psychology, in this statistical analysis in psychology class. All right, so that's if you are working in a psychology setting, right? That's if you are working in a clinic. Maybe some of you won't be going into a psychology field. Maybe some of you will be going into other fields. And I just want to let you know that statistics is important for that as well, especially in the world that we live in now. So statistics is a way of understanding the world. It's a way of judging things in an unbiased manner in order to get to the truth. And I'll give you an example of this, which was completely not part of the research that I do, but just a personal interest of mine, and it has to do with the Captain Marvel movie. So when the Captain Marvel movie was coming out, there were claims, rumors, theories going around that male critics were going to judge Captain Marvel unfairly, that poor reviews were due to this gender bias, this sexism in the movie industry, that any bad reviews of Captain Marvel could be attributed to some sort of sexism. So, for example, this article from the Mary Sue, which is a feminist website that covers comic books and other aspects of that geek culture, wrote this article that said most of the negative reviews for Captain Marvel are by men, and then sarcastically, shocking. So the question for me was, is this actually the case? Is it actually true that most of the negative reviews are actually by men? Or is this just a fluke difference? So is it a real difference? Is there sexism in the critics society that is judging movies? Or is this just an imagined difference, a fluke difference that would have occurred just by chance? So what I did in my spare time, it took me about 20 minutes to do this, I went to Rotten Tomatoes. I took a look at every single review that was up for Captain Marvel at the time. I analyzed it with statistics, and it took the bias right out. It took the bias away from this. So it doesn't matter if you're coming from a point of view that sexism is causing all the bad reviews. It doesn't matter if you're coming from an opposite point of view. Statistics removes that bias, and what I was able to determine is that even though male critics gave Captain Marvel an 82% fresh score, and female critics gave it an 87% fresh score. So again, if you're biased, you can immediately say, well, look, males gave it a lower score than critics, sexism. But we're here for psychology, we're here to understand the truth. We want to get to an unbiased interpretation of this. And as it occurs, that difference, statistics let us know, and that's that p-value, and we'll learn more about that in the coming weeks. That difference is a fluke result. It's like if somebody flipped a coin in front of you 10 times, and it came up heads 6 times and tails 4 times. You wouldn't say, that's an unfair coin, that's a rigged coin. Same way here, this difference that we found is due to chance results, is due to a fluke occurrence, and that is revealed to us through statistics, again, that unbiased way of analyzing information from the world. All right, so it will carry with you outside of applications to psychology as well. So just kind of keep in mind these sort of things, what the goals are that we're working towards as we go through this course. All right, course overview time. So what are we going to be doing in this course? So to start this course overview, I'm going to give you a brief history summary of some ideas that came about in statistics. So we'll start off with Francis Galton. This is very brief. So Francis Galton, he's kind of like the godfather of statistics. He came up with many of the measures that we use, such as standard deviation, such as averages. He was the one that developed some of those ideas. We got William Gossett. He actually came up with the t-test. He did this anonymously. He's one of these weird researchers who published his work anonymously. He published it as a student, which is why it's often called student T for the t-test. But we'll be seeing the t-test. It is widely used in psychology. We're going to learn about Ronald Fisher's contribution to statistics, which is the ANOVA, which we're going to get to at the tail end, which is a very powerful statistical procedure that is used to compare 3 or more groups of subjects. And he came up with the F-test, F for Fisher. And we'll also learn about John Wilder Tukey, who came up with the Tukey test, which acts in conjunction with the ANOVA to help you not just know that there is a difference among groups, but lets you know which group is showing the greatest difference. And he named his test the Tukey test because statisticians are not known for their imagination. All right, so those are statisticians. Let's take a look at some great mathematicians from history. So we got Euclid. Euclid came up with, amongst other things, the Euclidean system of geometry, the idea of a space with x, y, and z dimensions. We got Pythagoras here, came up with the Pythagoras theorem. The sum of the squares of 2 sides of a right angle triangle is equal to the sum of the remaining side, the hypotenuse. Isaac Newton, who came up with calculus, was his major contribution to mathematics. So the ability to analyze the slopes of various curves in order to fit a tangent to those curves. And lastly, a very recent addition, just to let you know, math is not done. Kurt Gödel, who came up with, his major contribution was the incompleteness theorem, which I think is going to be very important for psychology and understanding consciousness. So he came up with the incompleteness theorem that basically said the more complete your system is, the less able it is to be completely complete, right? The less able it is to be 100% consistent. And his ideas were actually incorporated. If you're ever interested in the psychology of consciousness, I highly recommend the book Gödel, Escher, and Bach, the Eternal Golden Braid. This was a book written by Hofstadter. Yep, Hofstadter. And it is a very approachable introduction to these kind of ideas. He's a great writer. He uses a lot of great examples, everyday language. And just to give you an indication of how important this book is, if you browse mathematicians' Facebook pages and Instagram posts, these are the kind of selfies that they take, showing off their Gödel, Escher, and Bach Eternal Golden Braid books. All right, so that was your brief history of stats and mathematics. So why do we dedicate some time to going through this brief history? It's not going to be on the exam, so what are we doing this for? Well, we're doing it to prove a very, very important point, something that you absolutely must know as you go through this course. And that is that those are your statisticians, those are your mathematicians, and as you will notice, the two of them do not intersect. Mathematics is not statistics. And we go through this, and I make sure to do this on the first day, because one of the things that students fear about this course is that they don't have a mathematical mind. First off, that's a complete myth. The idea of the mathematical mind is a complete myth. And there's tons of research to show that. But importantly, very importantly, statistics, that top row, is not mathematics, the bottom row. You've noticed that nobody has made a contribution to both of these disciplines because these are very fundamentally different disciplines. So if you came in here worried that you might not have the mathematical skills to do statistics, remember this slide. This course is not about mathematics. You are going to learn exactly 2 new pieces of math that we need for statistics. You're going to learn them today, and then that is it. Everything else in this course is high school math, and very basic high school math. So this is not about doing math. It's not about being able to do math. It's not a math course. So if you are coming in here thinking, oh my gosh, I'll just get through this, I'm not going to understand this, I've never had a mathematical mind, get that idea out of your head. Know that statistics is a way of thinking. Statistics uses very minimal math. It uses very basic math. It uses math that you've been doing for years. So get that idea out of your head. I have, with the kind of program that I've developed for this course, taken people who thought that they were great at math to an A+ in statistics. I've taken people who thought they were really poor at math to an A+ in statistics. I just want to make sure that you get that point. Stats is not mathematics. So if you struggled with math in the past, that's the past. This is today. This is statistics. Completely different discipline. All right, so what are you going to learn about? Well, we're going to learn how to view the world as a statistician. We're actually going to be able to change the way that you think, much in the same way that the average person looking at the Captain Marvel reviews would have come to one conclusion based on their own personal biases. As a statistician, you are going to be able to take in information and process it, very importantly, again, these days in an unbiased way. So you're going to learn how to think like a statistician. You're going to learn how to think like Ronald Fisher by the end of this course. And one of the things to remember is that statistical thinking needs to be practiced. And this is more so for stats than any other course you'll take in psychology. So my own personal experience, when I was going through undergrad, I was able to read courses on personality and understand personality theories. I was able to read books on cognitive psychology and be able to understand cognitive psychology. I tried reading books on statistics, and I was not able to understand statistics. Statistics needs to be done. It needs to you gotta put your hands on the computer, you gotta do problems, calculate things, you gotta go through the actions. That is the way that statistics is learned. I'm not entirely sure why, I just know that it is. So that's actually really good news. These 2 things here are really good news, because on the one thing, I'm gonna assume that everybody starts at the beginning. I'm going to assume that nobody in here is coming in with a background in stats. Nobody has been on Wikipedia, checking out Ronald Fisher's Wikipedia page, and then just following links on their Friday nights, right? So everybody here, I'm going to assume, is starting at the beginning. And the other great thing about this is that this is something that everybody can do. It takes work, it takes practice, but this is something that everyone has the ability to do. And like I said, I've taken students who've gotten A+ in math to A+ in statistics. I've taken students who barely stumbled through Math 111, right? Barely got the prerequisite to be sitting in these seats, and I've taken them to A+ in statistics. They both did it through practice. They both learned how to think like statisticians, but it has to be done through practice. So make sure that over the course of this protracted semester, this accelerated semester, you are putting aside the time to put into practice, to do the work, to actually do the stats, because that is the way that you will get to success in this course. So to help that along, and also because of the commitment to practice, what I'm going to try to do to the best of my ability, this first class is going to be a little bit different because we're just starting things up. What I'm going to do to the best of my ability is I'm going to try to split up every single hour, and this is a clock here with the different mathematical functions being the different numbers. And if you can't figure out these functions, don't worry about it. This is not a math course, this is a stats course. But we are going to dedicate approximately, I'm going to try to do this as best I can, approximately half of the class is going to be dedicated to lecture, and then the other half of the class is going to be dedicated to actually practicing what we just learned about. So if we learn about how to do summation, we'll actually have time in class to practice summation. If we learn how to do a t-test, we'll have time in class to practice t-test. I'll try to do that as best as I can, make sure that we have time in class to actually practice. And this practice time is a great time to refer to that slide from the beginning of today's class and say, during practice, Dr. Yudicevich, I really don't know what I'm doing here or what's going wrong. Dr. Yudicevich, Excel is doing something weird. You know, can you come over and help me out? Make sure that you do that during your practice sessions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at an example of how important practice is, right? So we're spending a lot of time kind of getting our mindsets ready. And I find that oftentimes it helps to have something that you can remember. It helps to have something that you can refer back to for the importance of practice. So we're going to take a look at that right now. How important is practice? How much should you practice? And we're going to take a look at a particular example where not enough practice was done.
Prince. There's a new face of justice in Gotham. Who are you? I'm Bruce Wayne.
All right, so startling example, but proves the point, proves the thing that I wanted to try to get across. How much should you practice? You want to kind of think about that, what you just saw. You want to, another phrase that's been thrown around, don't practice until you get it right, practice until you can't get it wrong. So for example, when we're calculating z-scores, z-scores is one of the first things that students often find challenging in this course. When we're calculating z-scores, you might get it wrong. You might get it wrong the first time, you might get it wrong the second time, you might get it wrong the third time. On your fourth try, finally, you've calculated a z-score. That does not mean that you now know z-scores. That means that you finally got it right. What you want to do is you want to practice until you cannot get it wrong, until you sit down in front of that computer, calculate a z-score, and it's just automatic. It just happens. You sit there, you know the motions. You get to the point where it's not a struggle to get it right. It's basically a habit to get it right. So think about that video that we just watched. Every single time you're doing your practice, every single time you're doing your homework, every single time you're doing part of the study plan in my lab, think about that video, because every single time that you sit down and you do statistics, that's like you standing in the mirror going, I'm Batman, I'm Batman, I'm Batman. And you do it over and over and over again. And we're doing this so that you can't get it wrong. So think about that day when you sit down to your exam. You want to be the person that sits down to the exam. And when the exam asks you, who are you? You look at the exam and you go, I'm Batman. You do not want to be that student that looks at the exam and goes, I'm Bruce Wayne. Right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to sit at the exam and go, oh my gosh, it's all gone. I don't remember a thing. You want to make sure that you practice to the point where you sit down in front of a problem and you're like, boom, I got this. Let's get it done. That's the kind of level you want to reach. So keep that in mind as we're going through this semester. Make sure that you're doing the practice. There'll be ample opportunity for that so that you can practice those skills so they become automatic. All right, continuing with the course overview. This is a nice little visual of what your journey is going to be like this semester. So this is you right now. And this is, you can think of this pillar here. This is the knowledge that you come in here with. This is what your prerequisites have taught you. This is what your high school has taught you. This is the information that you come in here with. And you can think of this plank here as the skills that you're bringing to this particular course. So you're coming in here with knowledge. You're coming in here with skills. By the end of the semester, we're going to get you up there. Now, as you can plainly see, there is no way for you to be able to do the things that we're going to be doing at the end of the semester with the skills and knowledge that you have now. There's just no way to bridge that. And if you want to do a nice little experiment for yourself, go to chapter 10 and just read a little bit of it. And it will seem like it's a foreign language at this moment because you're just not ready you're just not ready for it. What are we going to do in this course? Well, we're going to get you ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to have lectures like this. You're going to have required readings where you build up your knowledge base, where you learn new things about statistics. And we're going to keep increasing that knowledge base as we go through this particular course. And starting in this course, starting today, you have the skills. You have that plank. You possess the skills you need to make it to the next step. So you have the skills today to follow along with what we're going to be doing in class today. Nobody will be lost by the end of today. So you'll be able to make it to that next platform. But as the course goes along, you're going to notice that the skills that you currently have are not enough to make it to that next platform. So what do? Well, we practice. We practice and we practice and we practice by doing the statistics. We increase our skills with Excel, with identifying statistical procedures, with doing statistics, and we make it to that next platform. And we continue to do this as we go through this entire semester. And by the time we get to the end of it, by the time we get to chapter 10, we do one final increase of our skills. You end up with an A+ in statistics. You can't even imagine why you might have been scared or intimidated about this course. And you are ready to face the world with your new abilities, thinking statistically. One thing to beware of is not increasing your skills. So if you try to get to that next level, stats builds upon itself. We are going to be using everything in this course that we learned from day one. We're going to be using it on the final day of class. It builds, everything builds in statistics, which means that unlike other courses, you can't skip a chapter. You can't not understand a particular area that we're going to cover. And importantly, you can't progress until your skills are ready. And if you try, what's going to happen is you're going to fall down into a pit, and you're going to know when you're down here, because the new material that we're covering in class is not going to make any sense to you. So if you are ever sitting in class looking at something new and it makes no sense to you, I'm not saying that, oh, you find it a little bit challenging, maybe you're going to have to review what's going on. I'm talking about the days where you might be in class and we just go through, you know, a new lecture, and at the end of the lecture you're like, I don't know what I've just seen. I have no idea what it is. If that's the case, that means that you're down here. If you find yourself down here, yet another great time to use that slide and call me over and say, Dr. Udicevich, I have no idea what I'm doing right now. Come to my office hour and just knock on the door. Dr. Udicevich, I was completely lost in class today. And we will find out what it is that got you down there, and we'll get you out of here. I've gotten students out of these holes before and got them back onto the pillars, got them, you know, to success in this course. But it needs to be done immediately, especially in the summer, because we are going to keep moving on, and your ability to get back on that pillar is going to burn up as the days and weeks go by. So every single class that we meet, every day that we meet, is the equivalent of a week in the normal semester. So bear that in mind. If you wait 1 week for in order to talk to me when you're lost, you will then be 2 weeks behind. So as soon as it occurs, maybe even during the practice session, call me over and say, Dr. Udicevich, I have no idea what I just saw. And I'll help you. I'll get you back up there. But make sure that you're doing what you need to do in order to navigate it successfully. And if you fall, call me over and we'll get you back on track. All right, a few more things and then we'll wrap up for this first hour. First off, course procedure. I like to run my courses like a research lab meeting. That means that all concepts are open to ideas and discussion. Just raise your hand if you have an idea about anything, if you need clarification for anything. If you need anything, just please raise your hand. I am a firm believer in that quote, there are no bad questions, except the one that is unasked. There are no bad questions, there are no bad ideas, but there are wrong ideas. So be prepared to be wrong. Be prepared to think statistics works in one way and it completely works in a different way. Be prepared to think about distributions in one way and then it's completely wrong and you got to get back on course. There are wrong ideas. You might have ideas that you might have 95% of your ideas about statistics might be wrong, but guess what? That's just how science works. That's exactly my experience, literally every day of my job. So every experiment that I run, I think I might know how it's going to turn out. It turns out completely opposite, turns science and psychology on its head. That's just the way it works. So I completely understand it. I completely get it. And if you find yourself having the wrong ideas about stats, again, call me over, we'll fix it, we'll get you on track. Remember, it's not intuitive. People do not naturally start thinking like statisticians. It's important to develop those skills. All right, let's hit some of these syllabus highlights. First off, office hours, office is upstairs. Office hours are going to be almost directly right after class. So class ends at 12:15. I just need a little bit of a break to kind of recuperate a little bit. 12:30 to 1:30 is when the office hours are going to be after every single day of class. So again, if you feel lost after class that day and you didn't get a chance to call me over during the practice session, come to my office hour and we'll get you fixed up. There's my phone number. Don't use it. I have about 29 unheard messages that I don't know how to access. If you want to get in contact with me, Canvas messages is the best way. I have a 24-hour response time on those. 98% of the time. So I do check it, try to check it as much as I can every single day. So that is your best way to get in contact with me. And also just be aware that you do have access to resources through Canvas, including student lecture slides. So I will post these slides, and today's slides are already posted. I will post them in Canvas so you can follow along. You don't have to take copious notes. You'll have the slides up there. You can take notes, and I highly encourage that, but don't think that you have to write down every single thing. In terms of the required text, we're using the IU text initiative. So your textbook is available through Canvas. You just simply log in, and you'll see the MyLab statistics modules there. The one here, where is it? MyLab Statistics Pearson eText. This is where you go to your textbook where you can do your readings. And also in MyLab, you will have your homework, your pre-test, your post-test. Most of your assignments are going to be done through MyLab. So we'll talk about that in the second hour of today. Other resources that you will have access to. So while you're here at IUSB, if you're using one of the computers here at IUSB, you will have access to Excel and SPSS, and both of those are for free. So you have access to Excel, you have access to SPSS here. You can do the entire course here at IUSB. You have the resources, the software that is required. At home, you can actually do the entire course at home as well, for free. So you have the software that you need that is required as well, with one little difference. So Excel, you can actually download. You can actually get Microsoft Office for free as a student here from IUware. So IU has programs. There's a lot of them there that you can download, install on your computer to help you be successful here at IUSB. Excel is one of them. So if your computer at home, the one that you're going to be using to do this course, does not have Excel, today, go and download Excel, install it, make sure that you got that up and running. A little bit different for SPSS. SPSS, you can install it on your computer at home, but you will be required to pay a subscription fee, a yearly subscription fee to access it. So it is not free if you install it on your computer at home. However, we have a cloud computing solution known as IU Anywhere. And what this is we have paid the license not for you to install SPSS on your computers at home. We have paid the license to install it on our servers here and to give you remote access to SPSS from home. So it is exactly the same experience as installing it on your home computer. It's just that you don't actually have it installed on your computer. It's via internet access. So IU Anywhere, you can find it at 1IU if you just put in IU Anywhere. And just so that you know, it's free. So as long as you have internet access at home, you can install a small little program called the Citrix Receiver. That is the program that talks between your computer and the servers that we have here. You can use SPSS at home for free with that resource. I just want to make sure that everybody knows about that, because I don't want you to fall for the error of trying to install SPSS and then thinking that you have to pay a subscription. You don't have to pay a subscription. You got free access through IU Anywhere. All right, a few more things and then we'll take a 10-minute break. This is just some syllabus highlights. Number one, we have pre-tests. So pre-tests, there's going to be 7 pre-tests. These are tests that are designed to reward you for doing the readings before we cover them, reward you for coming to class prepared. So if you'd like to earn 14% towards your final grade, you're invited to complete, that should be 7 pre-tests by the due dates listed. These are short tests, and importantly, and there's going to be a few of these, pre-tests cannot be completed after the due date. So please be aware of your due dates. Every single pre-test, post-test assignment is available right now. So you don't have to wait to complete any of them. They're available right now, but please be aware if you miss a due date, it cannot be reopened for you. So pre-tests are graded at that due date time. So just please be aware of that. you can send me, you could have the best excuse in the world. You can tell me, usually I completely forgot that it was due today is the ones that I received. That's all right, but you'll get a 0 on that pretest because, again, they're graded at the due date. So just be aware of that. However, the pretest, I do understand that the pretests are going to be challenging. All right, the reason I do pretests, and the only reason I do pretests, and I've read the course evaluations, and I know they are not popular. I know the students are not fans of pretests. The only reason I use pretests is because they are effective. There is an avalanche of psychology research that shows that learning outcomes improve substantially when students complete pretests. Even on the stuff you get wrong in your pretest, you learn it better down the road. So that's why I include pretests, because they are very, very beneficial. However, I do not want your grade to get destroyed by the effectiveness of these pretests. So your backup plan after completing a pretest, if you are just struggling with the material and you just can't score well on those pretests, just know that we also have study plan mastery points. These are done through the MyLab system as well. And if you don't earn 100% on a pretest, whatever you earn on your mastery points, I will take the maximum of your mastery points and your pretest as your pretest score. So if you're really struggling on a pretest, you get 50% on your pretest. But then after we learn the material, you go and practice with the mastery points and you get 100% on the mastery points for that chapter, I will change your pretest score to 100%. I will take the maximum of the pretest or the mastery points. So just bear that in mind. The pretests are important, but I don't want to destroy your grade, your GPA. So we do have the study mastery points as well. So again, if you're doing a pretest, it's good to struggle. It's good to go through that and challenge your mind to understand these concepts. But if it's beyond your reach at that point, that's okay. Do the mastery points, you'll still get 100% on that pretest score. Mastery points can only be earned up to the due date, so make sure that you're checking the syllabus for those as well. We're going to have post-tests as well. So after you do your pre-test, after we do the lecture, after you do your homework, you will then also have a post-test. Once again, post-tests cannot be completed after the due dates, so please be aware of those due dates. The exams, if you'd like to earn 42% towards your final exam, you are invited to complete 3 exams plus 1 final exam. The final exam is non-cumulative. So as much as it can be non-cumulative in stats, it's not cumulative. You will not be asked questions that you saw on exam number 1. Importantly, very importantly, the exams are open book. And what I mean by open book is I mean open anything you want to use except other people. So another thing that will become plain in this course is that statistics is not a memorization course. I do not expect you to memorize any formulas. I don't expect you to memorize any 5-step procedures. I don't expect you to memorize anything in this course. I expect you to understand stuff in this course. So whatever you need, if you want to come in with a sheet of all the little formulas that you want to use, if you want to come in with a sheet that gives you the Excel formulas, if you want to use Google while you're doing your exam and just Google, how do I do a t-test? That's fine. Whatever you need to get it done. I'm just interested in whether you can do it or not on your own. So much like in the real world, if you were at a job and your supervisor said, I need you to analyze this data for me by 5 p.m., they don't care if you have it all up here or if you need to go online to get that information. All they care is that at 5 p.m. you got that data analyzed and it's analyzed correctly. That's all I want in this course too. Not whether you can memorize stuff, but can you do statistics? So bear that in mind. Prepare your materials for the exams as well. Make sure that you're coming in with what you need in order to do statistics. And I'll be honest with you, the stats that I use, the statistical tests that I use, typically there's about 6 or 7 that I use in my research all the time. And I know those ones like that because I've been doing it for years. That's what happens when you practice. Every once in a while, though, I'll come up with an experiment that I do or a bunch of data that I need to analyze, and I'll know that one of those tests is not appropriate. The things that I normally do are not appropriate. And honestly, my first move is Wikipedia, and my second move is YouTube. And it's fine, because I get it done. So same thing with you guys. The exams are open book. The one warning for that, use the open book the way that it's intended. This open book is intended for you not to have to memorize things. It is not intended for you to learn the material during the exam. So if you're coming in and you're thinking to yourself, oh, this question is on how to calculate a z-score. What was the formula for a z-score? Let me look that up. Oh, there it is. There's the formula. Okay, let me do the z-score. That's the way open book is intended. You'll do great on the exam. If, on the other hand, you go, oh man, this question is about a z-score. What's a z-score? Let me start reading the book. Z-score is, let me see some of these lecture notes. Z-score is this, Z-score is that. You're going to run out of time. So just bear that in mind. Use the open book the way that it's intended. All right, makeup exams, just to be aware. I understand stuff happens. I understand people miss exams and miss class for a variety of different reasons. You can write a makeup exam. However, the one thing that I need is that you document why you missed your exam. So if you were sick, I need a doctor's note. If your babysitting fell through, I need an email. If you couldn't take your child to daycare because they had a fever in the last 24 hours, get your daycare to send me an email. If your boss is saying you have to go on this team building retreat and it's on Monday and that's the day of your exam, forward me the email from your boss. I understand a lot of different situations arise where people can't make it to a certain exam, for example. I can understand that, but just bear in mind, it needs to be documented. If your car broke down, get me the tow truck receipt. If you didn't get it towed, get me the repair bill. If your friend fixed it for you, get me the receipt, from the car dealership parts place that they went to. I just need something. So just bear that in mind if you can't make it to an exam. Yep.
What about witness observation?
Oh, we're about to get to those.
Oh.
Yep. Homework assignments. We have homework assignments, 28% towards your final grade if you would like to earn that. Homework assignments work a little bit differently than the pre-test and post-test. You can complete them after the due date. However, there is a 20% penalty for any questions after the due date, and that's per day. So if you finish 80% of your assignment, then that 80% gets graded 100%. You get 100% of those points. For the remaining questions, those questions get graded with a 20% penalty per day. So once again, maximize your points. Just know your due dates. If you're unable to complete tests or assignments due to circumstances that are beyond your control, illness, death in the family, etc., let me know. You won't be penalized for missing those assignments, but again, has to be documented. All right, a few more things. There's a syllabus grading breakdown, pretty standard. What isn't standard, however, is my breakdown for exams. So I just want you to be aware that I grade the exams on a sliding scale. So your best exam, whatever you score the best on, is going to be worth the most towards your final grade. So your best exam is worth 16%, your second best exam is 12%, third best is 8%, and then your lowest exam is only worth 6% of your final grade. And the reason that I do this is because statistics clicks for different students at different times. Some of you are going to be on it from day one. You're going to get A+ on your first exam, A+ on your second exam, 100% on all your exams from day one. Other students might do poorly on exam number 1, might do poorly on exam number 2, and then something happens, some switch turns in their brain, and all of a sudden exam number 3, 100%, exam number 4, 100%. I know that's a path that a lot of you might take. So to help you along with that, I have this sliding scale of exam scores here. So for example, if you get 50% on your first exam, that exam will be worth 6% of your final grade. You can still end up with an A+ in this course. So it's very forgiving for those of you that might not get stats right off the bat. Electronic devices, you can use electronic devices. However, no electronic devices other than the computers that you're working on will be allowed during exams. And that includes headsets, but importantly, cell phones. So we'll be using Excel to do calculations. If you need, if you like to use your cell phone calculator, just be aware, not during exams. We're going to be asked for cell phones to be put away during exams. All right, almost done here. If you have any questions or if you need accommodations for religious observances, if you're a student with disabilities, come see, let me know about it. Come see this, take a look at the syllabus for specific details. But basically, within 2 weeks of the course, basically as soon as you can, let me know about it and we'll make sure that we can provide you with accommodations for that. And also make sure that you conduct the syllabus for information on your responsibilities as a student, what to do in campus emergency, and for the policy on sexual misconduct. All right, last thing I want to mention is just take a quick look at the class syllabus here so that you know how to read it. It's basically going to be pretty self-explanatory, but I do want to point out one or two things here just to help you navigate it. So as I mentioned before, everything is available for you right now. So you can go into my lab right now. You can access every single homework assignment. So you can work ahead. You can also, again, go to the YouTube channel, watch the lectures ahead of time as well. Check out previous ones from previous semesters. So May 13th there, you can see that we got nothing due on May 13th. That new homework topics covered part of the syllabus, that tells you when we're going to be covering the material that you need to complete the homework assignments listed below it. So if you're working ahead or if you're taking a look at a homework assignment and you're like, oh man, I don't understand this, that lets you know when we're going to be doing it in the course. So that's just your sort of like preview of things to come. And then you can see that we then have due dates for these. So for example, today we're going to cover what you need for homework assignment number 2, chapter 1. And then next time, homework assignment number 2, chapter 1 is listed as being due. The other thing to keep in mind is that the due dates for this are midnight the day before classes most of the time. So for example, these first few homework assignments, these are going to be due by tomorrow at midnight. So March 14th at 11:59 p.m., that's when your first set of homework assignments are due. So bear that in mind. Make sure that you're staying on top of your due dates. Little advising reminders. And then again, it'll let you know when things are being covered and also when things are going to be due. And they're mostly due at midnight, the day before we meet for class. The only exceptions to that are going to be when we have our exams. So when we have exams, a few things to remember. First off, we're going to have a review session the first hour before exams. So that's going to be your final chance to sort of get any information that you might need in order to do well on your exam. Second hour is going to be dedicated to the exam, and then we're not going to do anything in the third hour because I kind of find that cruel. So we'll just have exams on those particular days. Before exam days, there's going to be a little bit of weirdness for the due dates and the due times. So just make sure that you are up to date on those. So for example, here you can see due May 21st at 12:15 p.m. is your homework assignment. All right, so and then due May 21st at 11:59 p.m. is your post-test. So just be aware that those due dates, those due times get a little weird around exam time. Make sure that you're aware of that. Make sure that you're up on that so that you don't miss any points or miss any deadlines. All right, so that is what I wanted to cover for this first hour. Went a little bit over time. Any questions before we take a break? All right, so it's 10:15. Let's get back in here at 10:25, and we'll continue on with today's course.